And so what we want to question in this video is, how does this help? We've said that these key elements of relation space, these 6 elements, form structural support for a bridge story that takes you from one place to the other. Well, this is the place it starts with, where there's mother senses in the shadow of father science. And so we want to see why these key elements, in what way do they help? Here's an analogy that I think will help. If you look to the left, you'll recognize that picture probably. And let's think of that as a village of people. And if you look over in the upper right corner, there's a blurb there. I'm just going to read that. Suppose elders in a village were to send a smart crew up the ladder to study with the high ones of physics. Now you see on the right, you recognize those 2 people going up the ladder. And they have the instructions to come back and tell the secrets discovered about humans in this universe we live in. Well, the sad fact is that the crew would come back, they'd be speaking a foreign language, mathematics. They'd be scornful of common sense wisdom. They'd be dismissive of religion. And they would be unable to convey anything useful to the daily lives of their people. And that is the nature of contemporary story today. Slide 020 just really indicates how we're going to tell this story. The reason that situation is like that, where the crew going to the high ones would not come back with anything useful, relates to mother sense and father science and their relationship. And you remember, father science is measurement, prediction, and control, out there physicality, and mother sense is in here, sensation, perception, and choice. So unintended seeds of social distress are sown by contemporary stories. So we want to tell the history of what happened in terms of these mythical figures. This next slide is going to have the word space and time. Don't let that freak you out. It's think in terms of a tape measure and a watch. Now the space and time, those words come in the physics story, and they come in our ordinary vocabulary, but I think the word space sometimes conjures up something complicated, but here we would just be talking about a tape measure, and distance is really the issue, distance in space, and time as measured by your clock. So let's take a look at this next slide, and I think it's a little busy, but I'm going to go through it in a way that I hope will make it clear after these words that I've just said. So in this slide 25, the point is that before 1900, mother sense and father math both had ideas about measurements with a tape measure and with a clock, time. Mother sense had the idea from her experience, from sensory experience, just wisdom of the ages, and geometry of classical geometry. Father Math had a more sophisticated thing, which is indicated up in the top corner, 3D math space, vector space mathematics, Euclidean geometry was the norm before 1900. And so that idea of a 3-dimensional math space was exactly the same as mother sense's idea of space and using a tape measure. So they agreed on that. And also time, they agreed on time. Time goes by your watch. In both cases, mother sense and father math both considered them to be separate from each other. Time ticks in a universal way for everything in the universe, and space is separate from that, and you can use a tape measure. And so they were agreed upon about how to map out objects in motion, because every object could be measured in that way. Where is it? Tape measure in a certain direction, and in time it moves along in different places. Well, both of them had the same idea of that. They were perfectly compatible viewpoints, except Father Math had a formal method. Vector space mathematics is a formal method, and Mother Sense had a common sense method, but they were perfectly aligned until around 1900. So the next image is going to be about what shook up the relationship. And what shook it up was the behavior of light. And that's really an interesting story. It's got a lot to it. But basically, there was just so much confusion about space, outside the Earth's atmosphere. And there was, it didn't make sense that light travels through that space like a wave. It doesn't matter how fast the sender of light is moving, it gets to the receiver at the same amount of time, no matter how fast that. And that, for different reasons, that's a confusing situation, because a wave, normally it goes through like water, or through air. You have sound waves, water waves. But this is a wave through nothing. And a wave really isn't something in of itself. It is the movement of the medium that it's going through. So if there's no medium, how could there be a wave? And that's the paradox. And actually, that paradox really has not been settled. That's part of what this is about. So, but confirming that light was going through in that way through empty space really shook the marriage up. It had implications, and that's what the next slide is about. To start with, I want to say that all electromagnetic radiation is light. So all of our communication systems, radio, all of that, television, everything is light. And experiments with light, visible light, in the early 1900s, that's what caused all the trouble. And the implication was, if you look down at the bottom of that central picture, and you look at the central picture, you see a watch wrapped around a tape measure. So the bottom line was that the implication of those experiments of light traveling through an empty space at a constant speed, that the implication was that time and distance are not separate, they're joined. So time and distance. Now they ended up making it time and space. That's a little different feeling to that connection. But time and distance are joined. That is the truth. Well, to Mother Sense on the left, that meant her common sense perception was not right, and that revelation of time and distance are joined. That doesn't make any sense to Mother Sense. You can't understand it. And the scientists will admit that. No, we don't understand it. We just know how to model it with mathematics. Now you look over on the right, and it also upset Father Science. I've been saying Father Math. I kind of interchanged those two, because it meant the mapping methods are wrong, that you can't map objects in motion just by pointing in the direction and telling the distance the way it is. It doesn't work that way. Now, in normal situations, normal meaning the things that we would deal with in ordinary life, things aren't extremely fast and gravity isn't varying just a whole lot. It doesn't make any difference. But for the scientists, that was very upsetting. It meant all of their methods of vector space, 3D vector space, and time methods were wrong. So both of them were upset. Mother Sense couldn't make sense of it. Father Math, his stuff was wrong. And so it was a marriage crisis. It's as if that behavior of light, ended up on the doorstep outside of marriage, and both of them were defensive. Oh, it's not mine. I don't understand it. So it caused a major problem. So in image 35, here's what happened. They got a divorce. And that's where the story turns tragic. Father Science was granted a divorce and custody of the official story about our university, because he was able to repair his measurement and prediction methods using mathematics detached from common sense. So basically, he went up the ladder from three-dimensional things, which make sense, to four-dimensional things, which make sense mathematically, but not with our sensory experience. We can't visualize four-dimensional things of that type that's in space-time. So Father Science was successful in fixing his problem, but that nobody could understand it, so Mother Sense was not successful. Father Science was granted a divorce, and he got custody of all the official story about our universe. It all comes from physics. Now, worse than that, if you look over on the right, Mother Sense was dishonored because she was thrown under the bus because of her sensory experience understanding. It was considered to be illusory and incapable of grasping reality. So the idea was that Father Science grasped reality when he repaired his measurement and prediction methods, and Mother Science therefore was unable to do that and was inferior and just had very poor understanding of reality. And that's a tragic turn for history. And so the consequence is that the smart crew that we sent up to the high ones of physics would be taught that our universe is a 4-dimensional space-time continuum, which is something that makes no sense outside of mathematics. You see the exclamation marks. The problem is that is, as we'll see. So if you look on the left, what they say is that common sense wisdom or common wisdom is limited by our slow and illusory human senses. So it was kind of, as we said, sort of demoted, dishonored. And time, Minkowski is the one who created this geometric structure. And so the story that our crew would get is that time is a fourth geometric dimension joined in our regular 3D space. Now, whether you can picture that or not, it doesn't matter because nobody can really picture it. It's just that that's what they say. It's a four-dimensional, ours is a four-dimensional space-time universe. And you see the picture on the right, which I just like a lot. Space-time, the wooden words where the wristwatch is wrapped around space and the tape measure is wrapped around time. So the problem is that they say that this formalized vector space mathematics is reality. And in a little while, in another slide, we'll see what they should be saying. But this is what they say. And so that creates a problem for our crew that was sent to learn from the high ones. And here you see in slide 45 or image 45, the tragic consequence. The inner light of wonder is now in eclipse for Mother Sense. Our crew learns from the high ones and tells the kids in the village it is pointless to even wonder, because unless you are fluent in sensory detached mathematics, you cannot understand reality. That is a tragic story for our young ones, because we can have a common sense understanding of the reality that is put forth to us by relativistic behavior.